Sorry buddy, what's your name?
Cameron, mate.
Cameron, I'm Dale. Pleased to meet you. Thanks for stopping and talking to me, buddy. I'm going to ask you some questions. Usually I try and kind of lead in with this and get some grounds on reasoning and stuff. Do you understand like logical reasoning and that type of process?
Yeah.
Well, can I ask you what you're studying?
I'm doing zoology.
Zoology. Have you heard of flat earth?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it?
I don't think there's flat.
You don't think it's flat?
No.
This is where I want to go about the logical reasoning, and I'm asking people as individuals. So you know what an appeal to authority is?
Yeah.
You know these types of fallacies that people invoke, you know, bandwagon, yada yada. If I ask you as a man to man, if you could reason with me and convince me that the earth was a globe, how would you go about that?
Well, like the experiment where you shine two lights between a box, and then if the earth, over like a long distance, shine a laser, and if the earth is flat, you'd be able to see those two lines intersect them. But if you do that, you don't see them. Right. So you see it being lower if it's far enough away. I think like 17 miles there.
Can I ask you where you got that information from? Was it a YouTube video or one of these types of things?
Yeah.
Have you conducted that yourself?
I have not. No.
Have you analysed it?
I've not analysed it.
No. Like things like the refractive index and how light would function through the mediums, different temperature, different pressure, different density, how these would be factored into the types of things?
I have not, no.
You've no? Is that the only thing that you could offer me in regards to the Earth being a globe?
Pictures from the moon landing, but then I don't really know if I believe the moon landing, so...
So that's again, if I was to reason with you and I was to, for me that would open a can of worms up. If that was to set a precedent, a standard, that knew that I could say to you, well listen, I've got pictures of Mickey Mouse.
Okay.
Do you now accept that as scientific valid reasoning for Mickey Mouse's existence being objectively true?
No, I suppose you wouldn't. No.
So do you think it's reasonable then to opt for what you see two-dimensionally on a screen as being valid reasoning for a belief?
I mean, you could get into the fact that you can't really believe anything, because unless you can conduct something yourself. Yeah. And that's the point. Do you not think that's reasonable to be that way? So if another man for you make a claim to me about the objective world, if I can't demonstrate that to myself, directly measure it, observe it, would you say that's scientific or unscientific? There's so much data involved in a lot of scientific experiments that not one person could carry them out.
Yeah.
So it's debatable. One of my modules is philosophy, and I looked at epistemology. Yeah. And there's a lot of different theories out there that you could believe in one thing or another, and you can never truly know anything from some theories.
That's a kind of philosophical position. I take it direct from experiential. So, you know, I take reality being objective. You know, there's definite physical laws regardless of my belief in them. An example, if a newborn child comes out of the hospital and there's a car accident, there's a definite cause and effect. There's no requirement for a philosophical belief or any of these things in that child. So there is an objective reality as far as I'm concerned. Okay. So if a man makes a claim to me, I expect to be able to demonstrate it practically and physically. Would you think that's sound reasoning to go on?
Yeah.
Yep. So again, I'll come back to it. If the Earth's a globe, can you reason with me? Can you convince me? By the way, I'm not invested in anything, you know, one way or the other. I experience the Earth as being a level plane. That's my immediate experience. Do you experience that?
Depends how far you can actively see, because like for example, if you go to like the seaside and then you look out in the ocean, eventually the Earth stops. You can see a slight curvature.
From left to right?
From left to right, and then you also see it when it's further away.
I've conducted these types of things, and the horizon's called the horizon because it's a horizontal. So from one side to the other it's a perfectly straight line. What I postulated was an equilateral triangle. So if you're an observer and you think that you're seeing a curve left to right, or you see something going over a curve in the distance, if I'm at 60 degrees to you and the object, what I should then get is a definite, you know, drop from a centre point left to right. Do you agree with that? But
I don't do physics, but yeah.
Yeah, but you can reason, you understand what I'm saying to you. But in reality that's not there. The horizon's a perfect straight line. If I put a spirit level up with a tripod and a pan, you know, over a span of 180 degrees, there's no deviation from the spirit level and the horizon.
Well, it depends how far out you're seeing, because I think there is. I've not conducted the experiment myself, but from what I've perceived, there has been.
See, what I'm getting to here is the whole point. That this is what I'm trying to uncover and establish, is that people have these beliefs, but they don't fully comprehend why. and you know, you're citing things that you would admit yourself you don't fully comprehend them, you've never conducted them, and what I'm trying to uncover is that it's a bit flaky, the reasons for why people accept these things to be true, and expose that. So,
yeah, but there's so much information in the world that you can't physically go about and verify every single piece of information. There's just too much information.
Of course, for specific aspects, but for two human beings that experience the world directly, I think it has to be something that's accessible to anybody, and we should be able to reason and point to these things quite freely.
Is it alright if we cut this short? Sorry, my mate's
Sorry, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, buddy. You too, thank you.
I've seen you, like, I've always been about that. I didn't know if it was someone behind me. I was like,
what's your name, sorry?
Ronan.
Ronan, I'm Dale. So, how you doing?
Jamie.
Jamie, pleased to meet you guys. Thanks for spending your time with me here today. Usually I lead in by trying to lay some grounds on this, right? But I'm going to just quickly, as human beings, right, in order to accept something as being objectively true, my standard is practical reference. Somebody makes a claim to me about the objective world, I have to experience it practically, I have to be able to directly measure it, experience it in 3 dimensions. Would you think that's sound reasoning?
I would agree with that.
Sound reasoning. Have you heard of people questioning the shape of the earth?
Aye. Yes.
Flat earthers, all that stuff, what's your thoughts on it? Rubbish. Bollocks. Reasons why? What you know, what's your vision of flat earth? What's your picturing of it?
For me, it just isn't. It's just we are men of science. We do engineering.
Excellent. Same.
We do all the theory in uni, and it just isn't.
Nonsense. So based on what we agreed upon, you know, human beings, practicality, if I was to ask you to convince me that the earth was a globe, how would you go about that?
I would simply say, would you like to go on a nice holiday, take your plane, and say,
an aircraft.
how you look at that window there.
So you think visibly you can tell the geometry of the earth visibly?
That's what you're saying with what you're saying about, like, agreeing with things. If you can see it, if you can actually see something, then well,
if I can clarify on that, you know, vision's got a geometry to it, so that would have to be something separate. Like if we look along that street right now, the floor appears to rise up in front of us, trees get smaller, and the sky appears to descend, and the sides appear to converge. So there's a geometry to my vision. The world's no like, you would agree the world's no like the way it appears out there?
Aye, of course.
Right, so that would be a separate question, because if it's only optical, it's about the geometry of optics. Do you understand that?
Yep.
So when we say we can see curve on the horizon, is that
can't fall off Earth. There's another one.
What's that? Sorry.
You can't fall off. It doesn't. If it's flat, it has to.
Oh,
be a boundary.
sorry. See, before we go any further, I'm not an advocate for any flat Earth model or any of that stuff, because I always get this response. People jump in and start, you'll get a bit of gish gallop. I don't know if you know what that means, where we jump from one point to another rather than establishing, you know, we're reasoning from one point. So, you know, if we accept that there's a geometry to optics and it has to be accounted for, then how would you scientifically give me a direct measure that there was a curvature there, rather than just saying I think I see it? Because I'll tell you,
it's done in the past. It's been done before, and
so that's an appeal.
That's the whole basis of mathematics.
So that's an appeal to consensus. Then, listen, I'm not attacking you, and people get uncomfortable because what I find is that I'm exposing is that there's a weakness in why people believe what they believe, and they don't fully comprehend why they believe what they believe, and that's the only reason I'm here, is to try and expose that, not to make anybody look silly, because I guarantee if you look on my channel, you'll have seen me here many times, and it's a similar response I get, and people will jump to, what about this flat earth question, and you know, this, that and the other. So getting back to it, you know, again, me and you reasoning with each other, never mind consensus, universities, blah blah blah, how are you going to convince me it's a globe?
Well,
do you think it's concerning there's a difficulty there right away?
I just think, I genuinely think about, like,
I know you want to just go, well, that's just rubbish, I don't need to think about it.
I don't want to do that way. I'm more like, why is it such an issue? Why is there such an issue about, like?
Well, for me, it's never went away. If you look over history, there's this kind of debate's always been there, and only when
what problem is it causing, like, to people? What problem is it causing for the three of us, like, doing our university? What problem is it causing for you?
Again, this is what I'm saying, where we're jumping to some, like there's an attack and defend thing. Here again, I'm no defending anything. I'm trying to expose their reasoning and how and why we believe the things we believe. So it's not really an ego thing where we're trying to battle each other. It's about how do we establish grounds for objective reasoning. Do you understand what I mean? So if I come back to it again, how are you going to convince me that the Earth's a globe?
You need a bit of time.
Objectively.
I need a bit of time to think of that one. It's a hard thing to ask on the spot.
Yeah. So you see your engineers. The datum lines that you use in engineering, regardless of what it is, if I want to construct a bridge, a building, regardless of how long it is, I've got a close friend of mine who's a structural engineer, high up, works in these types of, Navy shipbuilding. He told me that in structural engineering, that when we're building and constructing, regardless of the length of a construct, the downward vector are considered parallels on any given section, so that the datum lines that we operate on is a horizontal and a plumb, and any section that we're going to build always has a parallel downward vector. Do you comprehend what that means? Right? That's the practical applications that we're utilising in reality, and it's Euclidean geometry. You've heard of Euclid? Never heard of Euclid?
I've not.
Euclid's postulates. Right. Well, we'll not get into Euclidean geometry. You need to go and check that out and educate yourself. But that's the datum lines that we operate from. So if I want to look at anything construction, if I want to look at flight, I want to see the angle of approach, angle of attack, the distance of an aircraft tracking it, I've got a horizontal plane and a vertical plumbing level. And this is how we're accounting for everything. At no point in any of that observation or study have I seen accounting for curvature. And I never see it in engineering. I've been involved in engineering, been involved in construction, I'm a mechanic to trade. I never see any of that stuff. Have you experienced any of it? Have you ever considered that you need to take these things into account?
We've not worked at big enough scales to take curvature into account.
No. So you agree that your datum lines that you're functioning from are horizontal and plumb?
Aye.
And they'll say that's for local purposes. Right? So what I'm trying to establish, at what point then do we start accounting for a curve? If I'm a builder, and before we had any kind of lasers, and even to this day, what's more accurate and considered more accurate is water levelling. So the physical properties of water that I can demonstrate to you that you experience is that water takes the shape of the container, and it will form a free surface, a horizontal plane, equal in elevation from one point to any other given point upon the surface of the plane. That's how water behaves, that's how liquids behave. Would you agree or disagree?
To a point.
To a point. Observably, demonstrably, it's a fact.
We only have so much capability with our human eyes to visualise.
So back to vision again, but again that's a study of optics. It's not a study of the three-dimensional world. So we're talking about how we measure and utilise things in the three-dimensional world, not just by looking. I can look at things and make an assertion about it, but chances are I'm going to be wrong, because the geometry of my vision doesn't portray the world the way it actually is. So I want to hammer on the point on water. You know through your experience that it takes the shape of a container, forms a free surface, a horizontal plane. That's your experience.
Right.
That's your experience.
Yeah.
That's your experience. At what point do you think it starts to change its behaviour and display curvature on the surface? Have you ever observed that? You ever witnessed that?
Of course not.
You? So where do we get that notion from then? The picture on the TV? Do you think that you should throw out your objective reasoning and direct faculty of experience and try and reason a way to accept that rotund bodies of water can exist?
What about a satellite?
Can we stay on that point and then we'll go to the satellite?
Similar.
I'm just looking for a concession on the water thing. And do you think there's something to think about there? What I'm trying to establish. You don't?
I don't.
You don't?
Don't think there's anything to think about there.
You don't think there's anything to think about there?
No, it's gone way too deep for me.
No?
I just think it's a bit
But a waste of time?
Not your video, I just mean the point.
That I have an investigation into it?
No, I don't think it's a complete waste of time.
You do?
Yeah.
That's because you're quite happy to accept
Yeah, I am.
the way it's been presented to you, which is honest, and that's absolutely fine. I totally get that. You'd be the same, you accept it, because that's what's been presented to you. Aye, no worries, and I totally get that, guys. And that's a point a lot of people make, you know, that other people are too busy with their life. I see a massive relevance in it. It's important to me. So this is why I do it, you know. And hopefully, you know, again, people would look at somebody like me and say I'm this, that and the other, but I can reason with you. I'm no outlandish, I'm no out there. You can't really deny my reasoning processes, can you?
No, fair enough.
You wouldn't think I was insane.
Why are you doing this though?
Highlight these points. You know, I believed I lived in a globe for the majority of my life.
You still believe it?
Nah.
You're a flat earther?
Nah, not a flat earther either.
So what do you believe?
I don't know what the full dimensions are. From my direct experience and what I know about the practical applications in reality, I can establish that I'm on a level. Everything tells me I'm on a level. You know, and everything that we account for is on the level.
Why does it bother you?
If you got on a plane though,
because
just flew east, you'd end up back at the same point.
Well, can I get back to this? Because, right, imagine, just for talking's sake, right, you've been told you're on this sphere in a vacuum, right, flying about an endless vacuum, and there's no rhyme or reason to that, and there's limited resources, and there's all this kind of stuff going on. What if that's not the case? What if you're somewhere there's an abundance, and that there's other lands possibly across the way, and there's other things out there to be discovered? Would that not intrigue you?
No, I don't like to think about that.
No? Would it intrigue you?
Back to his point there, did you hear that?
What was that, sorry?
You get on a plane and fly east,
Yeah.
Where are you going to
you'll
end
be
up?
back at the same point.
Circumnavigation. Do you know how a compass works? Compass flies parallel to the earth.
Yeah.
And regardless, so say you're the North Pole and that's going a straight line, what's happening to my needle as I keep going?
Right.
So I can fly east and I can fly west and I can come right back to where I started again on a plane, on a flat, because that's how you hold a compass. If you're on the underside of a globe, your compass has got to be pointing away out here, up into space. I don't know how that functions. I can't even map that two-dimensionally. I mean, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, but now you question literally everything. You know, question our belief in science.
For me, it's important to question. I don't want to be a follower. I don't want to be part of any cults.
You are a follower. By living in buildings, you then believe that's going to stand up. You believe the science.
Well, there's a physics to that. You know,
physics.
Yeah.
The Earth.
Yeah, of course there is, but that's what I'm trying to uncover. What is the physics? Is it purely on paper, or is it actual physics, like physical reality? Physics to me when I was growing up in school was stuff that you used physically.
Do you believe in physical geography then? Like tectonic movement, do you believe in that?
Well, I think there's things that go on with the earth, aye. But again, I don't have to have a belief.
Have you ever seen a tectonic plate? Do you feel the tectonic plate moving, but you believe that?
No, I don't believe it. Why? This is a point. What necessity is there for me to have a belief?
Well, that was what we said at the start.
Well, if there's a claim, that's fine. If there's a claim there, but if my attention goes to it, I'll try and pursue it so that I can experience it. I don't see any way that I should instill it as a belief. Why do I need to believe it?
No one's making you believe it.
Exactly. No, nobody's making me, but why should I believe it?
You shouldn't have.
Is there anything I should need to believe in?
No, but I feel there's like a group of people with flat earth, they just say it's a flat earth to just be different.
Do you think so?
Aye, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're correct. There is a faction of that, same as everything else. People like to be outlandish, people like to be different. I totally agree. And when I look at this type of thing, there's loads of different factions of what people would call flat earthers. So you get people with different maps and models and different ideas about what's going on. Again, I'm not interested in any of that because I don't want beliefs. I just try and establish what's objectively true and go from one point to the next without trying to project, you know, what I think the earth is, because I'm only one man. I'm standing here in the middle of fucking Glasgow. It's a massive area. I couldn't account for that myself, you know.
Right, one more question, right, and we're going to go. So
cool.
You don't believe it's a globe? Yeah.
No.
So see when you think of like the moon landing, what do you think of that? Do you not believe in that? Right, when you see the earth and the moon, you think that's...
See, the thing is I don't even analyse the moon landing per se, right? I go with the claim, we're in an infinite vacuum and we're in a system, an open system with pressurised gas. Back to physics again. Physics shows me that in order firstly for me to have a vacuum, I need a container. In order to have pressure, I need a container. Now if I put those two systems together and I remove the divider between the vacuum and the pressure, immediately I get equilibrium. Immediately. So, you know, I've got to invest faith in some mathematical sophistry that we can be this tiny gas ball in an infinite vacuum and some magical property holds this gas within the realms of the earth. That's a belief, because physics shows me that that's nonsense. And you know it, if you're an engineer, you know that to be the case.
That's
Take
out
out,
of my depth, engineer.
well, take out your deodorant can and it's got a higher pressure in it. If you puncture it, what happens?
Ah, but you're going from in your hand to fucking
So
unmeasurable.
against scale, you know, back to it's that big that I can't experience it or measure it. That's like a belief that I'm no willing to invest in.
Fair enough.
But listen, guys, I don't want to leave it in a bad taste. I appreciate your time.
That's what
And see, the thing is people get really triggered by this, and I think that that's something that people should really look at as well.
I just don't think people like being manipulated with fancy words.
Do you think I'm manipulating you?
Just a wee bit. I think you're trying to get a reaction out of this.
Think so?
Yeah,
And
I do.
can you give me specifics?
I do. I think you're standing there with that camera right there, and you're saying these fancy words, and I just think you're trying to get a reaction out of this.
But give me a specifics.
I could just see it.
I could just say that you.
Me questions and
Well,
you're
I
looking
can
for
just say.
silence.
I can say that you're triggered, and that you have no specifics and no rational reasoning to offer me about why you just made that statement. And I think that's your own ignorance,
You could think that if you want.
because you're triggered emotionally, and I'm no emotional. I'm trying to be objective. I've got no personal gripe with any of you guys.
I know you don't.
But if you can offer me specifics, I would totally analyse that and say, well, fair enough, you've made a valid point.
It's obvious that your videos are there to try and get a reaction out.
Aye, well, that's what the questions are about, to engage in the topic, not to antagonise you.
So I just don't.
No.
Don't know what we've taken for this to be honest.
No worries. No worries at all. That's fine. Listen, thank you so much. All the best with your career. Take it easy, guys. So, that's what you call triggered. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And this is continually what you see happening, that people get triggered like that. And it's their projection of their own insecurities, their inferiority complex, because they don't have valid reasoning for why they believe in it, and then they want to turn it on you, that you've somehow done something to them by asking them simple questions. So this is higher level education. This is supposed to be the cutting edge of human reasoning and logical rational thought, but they can't even take responsibility for what they believe to be true. Pretty sad, eh? Goody, easy my boy. Hello, hello. Where's the kisses? Where's the kisses? Oh, he's a good boy. He's a good boy. What are you doing? What are you doing? Eh? You don't care what shape the earth is, do you? You don't care. What the boys doing? Eh? He's my boy. Good boy. Shouting him.
Hey, my boy. Hey, my boy. Shout on him because he's wee face.
Come on in, he's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's a good boy.